Chill here with Sirius Talis Moon. Let's go to the Mercury ingress to Aries together, because Mercury sextiles Uranus from Pisces. Mercury hour. So, um, the synodic cycle of Mercury and Uranus is actually kind of um, it's not a Saturn Uranus, it's not a Pluto Uranus. It is way more quick, but still notable. The closing sextile. Jupiter in Cancer, Venus 18 degrees Taurus. So we are embarking at the closing sextile with Venus in the degree that can denote at are there issues of toxic relations or or values that are poisonous or poisoned. Um, it also, by the way, it's also like Venus 18 degrees, anything is like toxic femininity. Like the world has talked about toxic masculinity, um, but think about toxic. If toxic masculinity is what happened to a boy that is raped, toxic femininity is what happened to a girl. Um, Lovely things about this transit. We can find the words to say things we weren't finding the words to say. Astrology can be, by the way, a lot of messages around the astrological community, particularly when it comes to the voice of people, can be more harmoniously addressed. Unusual solutions or unusual um, ways of addressing an issue can actually yield something. But here's the thing, Uranus is ruled by this Venus that has a toxic femininity. Now, if I think about the entire issue around, let's say, secret society, is feminization as degradation and how that has affected society. Um, Sudden messages, sudden speech, sudden. Now, Mercury in Jupiter sign, it can be small words that make a big difference. Um, with Mercury in Pisces, there is still the non-verbal facet of communication. If I can think about one of the things with Mercury Aries is that it can be very literal. Um, and Mercury Pisces can can deliver a message through the nonverbal. Um, if we go back to around a year ago, we would begin that cycle. I think with Uranus could also be around Gemini. Um, Uranus could also be around Gemini, and Uranus does apply to square the nodes, which we should notice. It's a 7-degree orb, but it's an orb. Um, so many details to pay attention to, um, which leads me to another. There's so many episodes that need to happen. Because, I was thinking about April astrology, and I see the stellium in Aries. And I was at the airport, so I was recording from the airport for the entire year, using the scheduled function, um, not really knowing if I'll get to the now I know it sounds boring almost, but but this has been quite some decades that I did not know if I would get to the entire year. Most of them have been lived with wanting to want to live, but then um, it's kind of like, oh, in retrospective, when I think about that, um, Uranus squares the nodes. Um, Now, here's the thing about Uranus squares the nodes. It's going to happen from the nodes approaching Uranus. And this is a time where scientific revolution, astrology, big tech, well, I think about even the Palantir crisis as this Uranus squaring the nodes, um, is mass technology that connects everyone. Whether they like it, whether they like it or not. um, Uranus squaring the nodes. I really need to. First of all, I need to research Uranus squaring the nodes. Uranus squaring the nodes from Gemini. Uranus in itself is disruption. So Uranus in trine or Uranus in harmonious aspect can be either a positive distraction or positive disruption. Uranus squaring the nodes is the crisis is in crisis with something that is a crisis. You know what? I think Israel had a little bit of an attempted ceasefire with Iran, but then it started attacking in Lebanon, and Iran is like, Israel, please. And Israel is like, but it's not Iran. I don't know about Hormuz. Okay. Like United States is attacking in Hormuz. I don't know what is Israel doing. Now here's the funny part. Israel is not in NATO. It's also not in the UK Ukraine type of NATO 2.0 NATO. Um, okay. So we're probably gonna have fated event. We are having fated events with astrology. Um, Again, I speak about this Uranus, and I go on a unexpected trip around the neighborhood looking for our cat. Mm-mm. This is where Mercury is delivering. I guess now this is why so many messages around astrology are coming up, because this is where we are able to, perhaps in the best way we can, communicate um, as much as what we have to say within that state of overwhelm that Uranus is going to ingress into. I'm literally seeing a bag. but I don't know if they left it here or it's a lovely bag, but it looks like I don't know if it's beautiful white bag. Um, um, so this is the time where we are able to, to the best we can, um, deliver the messages in the most harmonious way before Uranus squares the nodes, because there are definitely going to be fated events with astrology, activism, social revolutions, bombings. Uranus is also terror, um, and more than that, of course, science, big tech, big technology, the internet itself, and those are going to disrupt the disruption happening around the eclipses. Now, because it's Uranus, it's a lovely thing. The planet that modernly is most associated with astrology, in the past it would be Saturn or Mercury. Now it is Neptune and Uranus. And the planet most associated with astrology is also ruling over unpredictability. So when there's a Uranus transit, the astrologer's prediction is it's going to be upheaval and unexpected. Eventually it's going to be liberating, but Uranus is also associated with violence. Now, the times in history where one would say, well, that's pseudoscience, is like, that's what I thought about probability. It's like, what's probability doing in the explanation for how light behaves? Or where would you find an electron in certain constrictions of rays of light? When it's Saturn-related predictions, for example, Saturn entered Aquarius. Before that, I think it was Kelly that said, well, it's something to do with social distancing, and then there was the lockdowns, because Aquarius is kind of like taking space or being outside of, but it's also about community. So it's Saturn in his home sign. It's like everybody is somewhat distant too. And then we had the lockdowns. But with Uranus, it's like, well, weird things can happen. And we try to comprise the revolution from the context that we have. So Uranus in Gemini. And the context is going to be Ketu going between another Mercury sign, which is Virgo, to Leo. And in the beginning, Uranus in Taurus. Um, the people, okay, the people that were used to Uranus is life energy. The people that were used to rape or sexually harass to try to control something in the other person are running into basically an unpredicted rebellious response. Um, why? Because Virgo is detailed control over something. If I think about Virgo, think about the double blind um, experiment as a methodology. That's very Virgoian. People that try to direct other people. If somebody did not agree to be an actor in one's movie, think about Rahu going from Pisces to Saturn in its home sign. Not to Saturn in its home sign, to the home sign of Saturn. It's people wanting to place more restrictions on the individual. Uranus in Gemini makes it all, it creates a situation where either going to use the restrictions in their favor, or they're going to do something that ends up undermining those who try to put that restriction, but not on purpose. With Ketu in Virgo, we are purging the control over the details. With Uranus in Gemini, we are involuntarily playing with the details. With Rahu in Pisces, we're trying to see the bigger picture. With Ketu later going into Leo, we are dematerializing the leading role. With Rahu going into Aquarius, we are materializing wealth redistribution. With Uranus going into Gemini, we're like, hey, those who thought that wealth redistribution is seeing women as the things that is distributed, to the guillotine, please, your place is there. And Another disruption is going to be about the role that the social revolution or the astrology will play in Gemini. If I think about the first decan of Gemini, the first term in particular, we kind of ask ourselves, good thing, bad thing, who knows? I think when Rahu was crossing that decan, um, I was exposed to that teaching back then watching Vishen Lakiani. I don't know if he's on Epstein list or not. And there was this video where they were talking about something that really connects to me with Uranus, and it was the good thing, bad thing, who knows? If I think about Iceland, the way Iceland got equal representation of women into parliament was a sex strike by women. Now, if women cannot do that, then we had the Second World War where we had two generations of men and the women that said that the Me Too went too far, as per those phrases, ending up in anonymous mass graves. Um, Wherever Uranus is, it comes from a stance where, how should I say that? It needs to be free to do something. In Taurus, it needs to be free to be something. One of the worst things one could do is try to rebel against someone being an astrologer. This is also why the Epstein ring fell at the time where they tried to regulate astrology. Really, they tried to regulate astrology, and then the Epstein ring fell. Why? Because they tried to regulate something to do with Uranus. Oh, we can control chaos, we can this, we can that, we can that. It has a price tag. The price of making people a trade is that, and I closed the previous episode about the Sex Work is Work campaign. And I said the people that bought the Sex Work is Work campaign found out what sex work is when they were going to any job that is absolutely not titled as sex work. Now, when that tried to do that to astrology, boom, 9/11 on human trade is 9/11. And when they try, and I predicted that when they're going to try to regulate astrology, it's going to be really weird. But the thing is that the regulation of astrology was the attempt to basically make astrology another trafficking profession, another Epstein ring. And here is the thing, Uranus, why is Uranus associated with Aquarius to do with architecture? Every single individual needs a place where they can be who they are. Who they are cannot violate another person's ability to be who they are. Rapist is not an identity. So all this type of restricting the other's individuality, when it comes to Uranus, is no longer. Uranus is exactly that. Nobody tells me what to be. Nobody tells me. And Uranus is nobody tells me who I am. Nobody tells me who I'm not. Why was Uranus Aries in Aries prompting the Me Too? A woman that said no was considered a whore. A woman that, let's say, didn't say no was also considered a whore. A woman that said no, said yes, and later said no, also considered a whore. So what was the situation? That people were trying to decide for a woman who she is and who she isn't. Uranus in Aries says, Uranus Aries in Aries said, "This happened to me. That's the person that did that." It's also the not to tell. Uranus is also nobody tells me where to live, where not to live, where to, where, how should I say it, where to stay, where not to stay, or where to go, where not to go. If they want to stay alive. If they are really suicidal, I would interpret any attempts to limit where I can be or not be and stay or not stay and so on and so forth as basically people being suicidal and seeking a way to unalive themselves. Now, Uranus is the sign of trade. If people try to limit, for example, who can, I don't know, who can live in a certain area. Who can, um, who can, let's say, do astrology. Oh, but the people that do astrology, they must also traffic people and drug trade and like, no, no. Oh, but the people that live here, they must also be trafficked and drug dealer and no. This person cannot buy this apartment because and so and so and so and so. Uranus in Gemini, how should I say that? Think about, for United States, it was the Civil War. What was the Civil War about? Segregation. Oh, such people cannot live here, such people need to live there, such people, not with Uranus Gemini. Restricting black businesses resulted in losing the Civil War. Trying to put women back in the kitchen. You know, around COVID, there was this weird campaign, and actually I was trying to cook a meal for me and my friend. Now, it was not a thing because that friend was also cooking, um, so I didn't see it as anything. And I tried to cook, and I bought this special oil. Ketzach, I don't know how it's called. Now, originally, originally I bought it to treat the toenail fungi. And then I thought, why not put some of that in the salad? Not a fit housewife. Then I moved to an apartment and it had no washing machine. So there's no problem. I can wash by hand and hang it. I don't know how much. If I walk in the rain, it might be cleaner. I said, what if you had a partner? We can summer somewhere and then it won't get moldy. Oh, if a person doesn't marry, doesn't this, doesn't that, then they are trafficked and then they are this and then that. Um, there was a woman that joined that guy from Los Alamos and dropped a bomb because he was the only guy treating her right. Now, COVID, Uranus was squaring Saturn in its home sign. This is where they try to control everybody. And I say, yeah, I can put a mask. I don't, I don't count how much that mask cost me. Don't count for me if it has an extra cheese, wine that I never drink wine, but maybe for manifesting an apartment. Oh, they sell sushi here, okay, but you didn't pay for it. You made me pay for the mask. You made me wear a mask. You didn't provide adaptable housing when I can have the right to roam that is actually good for the nervous system, the immune system. If I needed, you know what was the way um, to deal with the police writing a fine for a mask? When I was in between houses, I try to ask for the police for help with a place to stay. Ever seen a police car running away from you? Now, what does a person that a police car runs away from them begins to experience? Shout out to Shaina Conde. BIPOC people thought, oh, cutting out the food stamps would make women give them some love, meaning BIPOC women. It's like they ain't seen no BIPOC woman. They ain't know no BIPOC woman. I was sitting in the garden eating my half moons. A guy comes up and he doesn't know me and he benevolently saying, hey, you know, when women sit like that, people think weird things. And I tell him, listen, thank you for saying that. If you see a guy that thinks weird thoughts, you take a gun and you shoot these weird thoughts right out of his brain. Ain't nobody telling anybody where to sit, where to be, where to this, where to that. But thank you for telling me. Wow. Oh, in our culture is ta 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 ta. Okay, you have just justified genocide? Because genocide is a great remediation for cultures that violate individual sovereignty. Oh, what? You mean Israel? Because Israel, yes. If it violates individual sovereignty, yeah. If if a person is raped in Israel, where was the state to protect them? True to any country. A country that wasn't there to protect the people that were raped. Why? Because Uranus is life energy. This is why the Uranus Leo is going to be profound, because Leo is the open, vulnerable heart. Uranus liberates from constriction. What, what prevents one from being open-hearted and vulnerable, wearing the heart on the sleeve, and so on? Uranus is going to liberate from that constraint. Now, Uranus is the life energy. Aligning with the heart is basically a sort of what people call Kundalini rise. A surge of life energy that's purifying, cleansing, when it's aligned with the heart. This is why Uranus and in a sign of the sun, or even Uranus going through the sign of the sun. Now, what happens when a person, let's say, goes through Uranus transit to their sun, and there's, let's say, a difficult aspect from Saturn or from Pluto, and somebody tries to still pose or prevent that person from aligning with their heart, having their Kundalini rise, or trying to siphon in on that energy. Now, Uranus is not Lilith. But what will happen is that any of the restraints or smear campaigns or that they tried to put on that person that was going through that transit are just going to fall off like a 9/11. Think about, I don't know, person separates, walks away. Each person needs their space. Now judging, moving on with life. They had a crisis, this had a crisis, everybody had crisis. Then one person dealing with their own life, another person smearing the shit out of the person that walked away, where the person who walked away completely unsuspecting of that. And then that person tries to move on with their life and this and so on and so forth. Then a crisis happens and they have to go back to the city where they left. Now, the smear campaign entirely relied on people not, on that person not being around. Very simply put, by just being, and 9/11 falls. By someone just being. Not being provocative, not being just being. Here is another thing. With Uranus, we see it in Venus sign, and we have to really pay attention to Venus sign, because what happens in Taurus is the last call before Gemini. Oh, women are equal, so they also have to go to war. Well, in the army they also go to war, yes. Okay, wait a second. This war is an illegal order. Oh, you're just trying to get away. No, I'm not trying to get away. The target is not Gaza. The target is every single human trafficking hub within our country that created invasion. The target is every handler, the handler of the handler, the handler of the handler of the handler, and every corporation that's associated with that. Any other thing is an illegal order. Now, another thing that happens. If women are mistreated in Uranus, they rebel that. They might not even understand where it's coming from. If the entire process was to try to subjugate women, and then in Gemini there is a contractual or agreement or something to do with participation in trade or with Uranus in Gemini, like, what did you think? That women will not have right to have housing themselves? And then what will happen to men? Women will not be able to make a living in a way that honors their sense of self-dignity and so on and so forth. And then what will happen to men? Last time they tried that, 2 generations of men died and became anonymous graves. Their names, their heritage, their lineage, their legacies all gone. Uranus in Taurus is the last call to liberate oneself from any type of toxic femininity. Seeing the feminine as profane. It was the back and forth of Uranus going into Gemini and back to Taurus when they cut the food stamps and no BIPOC men did not get more love. You do not betray a woman, you do not make a woman marginalized in your society. Betray a woman, and then when your marginalized society is attacked, expect for the women to line up and cooperate. No. You do not expect that the woman would be subjugated to the man, and when she is not compatible with that. And by the way, no one is. Nobody. The entire marital issues, intimate issues, psychological issues, and even financial issues of men, of couples, is from that expectation. They think that somebody, if they find an Asian girl, if they find a BIPOC girl, if they find a woman from another place, none of that. And that expectation is from one thing and one thing only. They were raped at secret society, then they try to do that to somebody from outside that society. Instead of changing the societal structure of rape-based societies, to abolish rape in societies. Uranus in Taurus, really, like if people at Uranus 29 degrees of Taurus still don't get it that sensuality and sexuality is not a tradable